This is a review of the F2 Photomic camera, the last fully mechanical professional camera from Nikon. It was sold between 1971 and 1980 and was the successor of the legendary Nikon F, the camera which inserted Nikon solidly into the professional camera market.
I'm going to go over all the controls of the camera, show you everything that's inside the viewfinder, then talk about this camera and its significance and why it's special to me.
We're going to start off on the top plate right side where you're going to find three familiar controls: the film wind lever, the film counter window, and the shutter release button. After that, things get a little different. The shutter release button has a coin-edged finger guard around it with three positions: a lock position marked with an L where the shutter is locked out and won't fire, an unmarked center position for on where the shutter will fire, and a time position marked with a T. In this position, the shutter will remain open as long as the finger guard remains in the T position. After that, the differences continue. The film speed dial is on top of the shutter speed dial. The Nikon F also works this way, but I have not seen any other 35mm camera outside of these two to have this feature. Looking at the prism, you have several controls. The first is a lever with a lockout button that is the first of two viewfinder releases. The other one is on the back of the camera body. Pressing these two together releases the viewfinder. Moving to the front, you find the maximum aperture indicator, and on the back an eyepiece shutter control and a ready light. On the left side, you find the EE aperture control contacts. These allow you to use the camera in shutter priority mode if you add the Nikon DS-2, which continuously adjusts the lens aperture to maintain correct exposure. Back on the top of the viewfinder, you see a window that allows ambient light to illuminate the aperture and shutter speed indicators inside the viewfinder and an illuminator switch to light them if it's dark out. After that, you see an external correct exposure indicator. Back on the top plate, but moving to the left side, you see the film rewind lever, the accessory shoe, the hot shoe contact, the model designator, and the serial number. Moving to the front plate right side, top to bottom, you see the mirror lockup lever and depth of field preview button, and below that you have a self-timer lever that allows setting from 2 to 10 seconds. Moving to the left side of the front plate, you have the lens release button and a threaded sync terminal. The back plate has a memo holder and the second of two controls used to remove the viewfinder already mentioned. Moving to the bottom plate, you see left to right the motor drive coupler, the film spool release button, the tripod socket, the battery cover, and the camera back release for loading the film. Looking in the viewfinder, you see across the bottom left to right the aperture, meter indications of plus, 0, and minus, and the shutter speed. Also, it's worth noting that if you push the viewfinder illuminator button on the top of the viewfinder, the indicators light up. You could use this in low light situations.
While this is a historic camera, it really wasn't on my radar as anything special. That's because I grew up in the early 80s. And at that time, my friends and I all dreamed about the Nikon F3 HP, which was the professional camera. After I got this one and started using it, I realized truly what a gem it is.
Nikon took the legendary F, rounded its edges, put a plastic cap on the film winder, bumped the top shutter speed to 1/2000th of a second, up from 1/1000th of a second on the F, changed the film loading process, and combined the depth of field control with the mirror lockup control. And they added a memo holder to the backplate.
So these were evolutionary changes over the F versus revolutionary changes, but they were very well received and very nice changes. In fact, the combining of the depth of field preview and the mirror lockup, as well as the film loading procedure changes, were carried forward to the Nikon F3.
Here's a quick comparison of the components that I care about of the cameras. We're going to look at the meter, the shutter, the backplate, the depth of field, and the mirror lockup controls to see how the camera design evolved through the years, from the F to the F2 to the F3. The meter on the F and F2 is in the viewfinder. This means when you remove the viewfinder, you don't have any meter anymore. On the F2, the meter was moved to the camera body, so you could change out the viewfinder with the focusing screens, but the meter was still working and still in the camera. The shutter mechanism is fully mechanical in the F and F2. This means that if your batteries die, all the shutter speeds continue to work. On the F3, it's electronic, meaning that if the batteries die, the shutter only works in one position. I think it's the F1 250th. The backplate works very weird on the Nikon F. You have to fully remove the backplate to change the film. While the F2 and F3, the backplate is hinged like a door, and you can remove it if you want to change out the backplate, but you don't have to just to change the film. The depth of field and mirror lockup controls are separated on the Nikon F and brought together on the F2 and F3. So the F2 is similar to the F in a few ways and the F3 in other ways.
So the more I use the F2, the more I realize it feels a lot like the F3 that I used when I worked at the newspaper. It's a very solid camera. The controls are similar enough and it looks a lot like the F3. It's also got a couple cool dents in it. I don't know if you'll be able to see this dent right here. I'm sure it was evident in other parts of the video. And then it's got a really cool dent right here. So it was clearly used by a professional for probably a number of years. It still works great today. All the shutter speeds work. It has a great shutter speed sound. This particular camera that I have has some really awesome brassing on the bottom and so basically it's a black camera, so it's got some really great character to it, which is one of the things I really love about black cameras, is the more you use them, the more they get character, which is the black rubs off and you see brass underneath. The camera listed in the 70s in the 450 to 650 range, which was a lot of money back then. I think you could get a pretty good used car for those prices. Nowadays, just like most film cameras, they are an incredible bargain. I have seen them on eBay for around $100, a few copies for that price. I've seen a bunch for $300 to $400. And I really do think it's a great camera at any of those prices, really, because it's so solid and it's so much fun to shoot and it's a piece of history. So I'm really glad I got it, even though I didn't realize how much I would like it when I did pick it up. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, hit the like button and think about subscribing so you can catch more of my camera review videos.